Back on Tuesday. Max Olson of The Athletic joins us now. And Max, since we've spoken to you since last week, you wrote a great column on re-ranking the class of 2018. And I was surprised to see that Texas didn't really fall that far in spite of their overall results and getting and a coach got fired in those 4 years.
Yeah, it's true. This is a re-rank that we do every year around signing day, and we updated it this week with the results from the NFL draft, which didn't really change the rankings a lot much. Georgia still had the best class in 2018 by far, and just a ton of draft picks, obviously 14 in that class. But yeah, Texas is one of those where kind of like they got a lot of starters out of their 2018 class, a lot of guys that are still there and will start again this year. But, would you say they've got like first round picks in that class? No, they don't. And that was a class that was a top 5 class for Tom Herman, and certainly raised expectations there. And, there's some good players like DeMarvion Overshown who are still there who have a chance to help their stock. And Joseph Osai obviously had a really good year in 2020. But, it's one of those kind of mixed bags a little bit where, the guys either started or left basically. And the ones who started, pretty good players, not a ton of all-conference players in that class.
And Max, looks like the playoff teams, you look at the re-rankings, it's basically the college football playoff, isn't it?
Yeah, that's not intentional, but that's kind of how it works out, right? I think that's still – it's funny because we talk so much when I talk to you guys about transfer portal and who's going where and all this stuff, but I think at the end of the day, it's still pretty important to have a veteran team and have a team full of guys that you've developed for a couple of years. And in this case with the rankings, the one that really stood out was Cincinnati, just a terrific class by Luke Fickell and his staff. It goes to show you just what they can do in terms of development. Obviously Clemson did well because, this is the class that had Trevor Lawrence in it. And, he took them all the way very early on in his career. But, this is, Michigan is one that a lot of people probably would have been disappointed by Michigan's class on signing day in terms of where it ranked. But, they signed Aiden Hutchinson and a lot of great players that, built a playoff team. So yeah, that's kind of where, we're trying to judge how did you retain them? How did you develop them? How many of them really started and made a big impact for you? And those are some of the schools that did really well.
You had Baylor 14th on the re-rank, and they were 29th in 2018 initially. So developing players, that's what Matt Rule and Dave Aranda have done over the last couple of years. Was there anybody who, when you started doing the math, like just really jumped out at you?
Well, it's funny because Baylor is one of those classes that did move up this week because, Tyquan Thornton got drafted higher than I probably expected back in February. And that just goes to show you, you knew obviously those guys were going to light it up at the combine, but, it makes a ton of sense, obviously, that class grades out really well just in terms of, their ability to, play for 2 Big 12 championships. And certainly we saw, Matt Rule and those guys took the right approach in terms of the kind of athletes they were looking for. And Dave Aranda did a great job of keeping those guys too, because a lot of times when these classes go through, coaching change in the middle of their careers, that's usually when you see at a lot of these schools, these guys go bail and go play somewhere else. And that's a credit to Baylor that they were able to hold on to those guys and keep winning with that class.
So, Max, we were talking just a few minutes ago about the other article in The Athletic, Nicole Auerbach and who was it? Chris Vanini. We're reviewing the coaching carousel and kind of giving our own thoughts on that as well. Is there a hire that sticks out to you that if you had to put your next paycheck, like this is the hire in the program I have the most confidence in, and then one on the opposite end of the spectrum of you're like, I don't know, like I'm not sure about this one. Is there an example of both those for you from this past carousel?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that I'm pretty, I don't know, maybe I'm being naive, but I'm pretty optimistic that it's going to work out for Mario Cristobal. Obviously, it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take pretty crazy level of recruiting, but we've also seen him do that at Oregon. I'm not saying Miami's, going to win a national title in the next 5 years, but I do think he's kind of man. And I guess we've seen some of these lately, right, where you say it's the perfect hire and they didn't go right, but that's kind of in terms of getting him and Clemson's AD in at the same time and really investing in it. I think that one's going to do pretty well. Honestly, I do. And then you asked me what one's going to kind of bust. I don't know. What stands out to you guys?
I don't know. Like I'm not sure how I think Brian Kelly will do well at LSU, but I don't know if they're going to get out of him what they wanted to.
I think it's the weirdest one for sure. I mean, and even if you ask, like, and I've had that conversation with other Power 5 coaches this spring when you go visit them. Like, what did you think of that? And they're just like, "What's he doing? You know, like, what was he like to leave Notre Dame as the all-time winningest coach and just go chase? You know, maybe is it about chasing the national championship? Is it, you know, just kind of chasing more pay and prestige and all that? I don't know. That one will never not baffle me. And then, man, if you're talking about that cycle too, like just Auburn not making a change is also crazy.
Yeah, especially like what do they do? Like they turn around, especially they're mad, you know, or there's plenty of people that are mad at Brian Harsin, and if they turn out to be right, you know, they've waited another year.
Well, I mean, look, it's like what we saw, you know, USC this last year, right? I mean, how many games can Auburn lose before they're firing the coach and maybe firing the AD too, right? I mean, like, so it feels like it's such a short leash, and it's one of those things where, look, I'm not saying it's right for them to fire Brian Harsin after year one. I don't think that like makes a lot of sense, but clearly a lot of people are out on him, and so you really wonder. I mean, how unless he just wins a lot of games this year, like how is that situation really going to improve here in the next 12 months?
Yeah, that was a great. I mean, both articles we've talked about so far have been really good stuff, really entertaining read. So hats off to everybody involved, and I'm gonna go back and read through that again tonight, just because there's some very interesting comments to pick up on. But Max, you've also been very busy throughout the last few months, monitoring, looking at, and reporting on the transfer portal. And we had you on last week. It was like, boom, the big announcement had finally come in, and you had to go, understandably.
Oh, yeah.
Jordan Addison to USC. And I know there's, you know, you had a post just a few hours ago, Diamante Tucker Dorsey from James Madison heading to Texas. And I know USC picked up another guy. But first things first, I mean, just your thoughts in the immediacy and now the last few days about the shockwave that was Jordan Addison finally ended up in Southern Cal.
Yeah, it feels like this transfer portal cycle is kind of done now. I mean, all the big names are really off the board here at this point. You know, other than maybe Charlie Jones from Iowa going in the portal the other day, which is surprising. I think we'll see some players try and go in the portal now and try to get an exception as a grad transfer. We'll see how many people try to do that, but certainly Jordan Addison is it's fascinating. I'm not surprised it turned out that way, given he was, you know, linked to USC really from the start of that whole field for he even appeared in the portal. But you know, that is like they've gone out and added 4 wide receivers. Starting caliber wide receivers from the transfer portal this offseason with him, Mario Williams from OU, Brennan Rice from Colorado, and then Terrell Bynum from Washington. So, you know, that whole offense, other than maybe up front, like that whole offense has totally been rebuilt through the portal. How quickly does it click? I mean, it's something we've never really totally seen before in terms of just building a brand new thing from scratch there on one side of the ball, and really a lot of it on defense too. So, I think it's going to take USC more time. I do. Like, I don't think we should be talking playoff with them this year, but certainly I think probably the fan expectation is going to be very high very quickly there.
How are you dealing with the emotional trauma we've all felt from the Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban war a week later?
Yeah, it's, I guess that's over too. That's a little sad as well. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I mean, there's just not, you really, honestly, I can't think of many other things you can really compare it to in terms of just nobody ever goes at Nick Saban like that. No one does. I mean, even the people that have worked with him, I mean, especially those guys, they always sort of treat him with deference. And so to see that, you know, I don't know. I saw that, you know, Alabama picked up a commitment from Eli Holstein, who was committed to Texas A&M in the past. I'm sure the recruiting battles between those two schools are going to be pretty terrific here from now through February.
And so now, Max, it's what, all eyes on Arch Manning, right?
That's right. Yeah. And you know, he's going to take official visits this summer. I think he's still taking his time a little bit, still not sure what to do, but it does certainly seem like, as much as Alabama probably did want Arch Manning, that, you know, they had to pull the trigger on somebody eventually, but I think this is going to be Georgia versus Texas, and, you know, certainly two very different situations. One program, you know, coming off a losing season, the other coming off a national championship. And, you know, is it kind of the sales pitch of Sark's offense and all the guys that maybe they can put around him in the scheme that gives Texas the edge, or is it, Georgia sort of being able to sell that, hey, they're going to get great recruits and they're going to, certainly stay in the playoff race. I'm fascinated to see kind of what wins out for him.
Max Olson of The Athletic. Max, enjoy the holiday weekend. Thanks for hopping on with us today.
Thanks, fellas.
All right. Max Olson of The Athletic. Oh, couldn't get there. He's fast, man.
He's ready to go enjoy Memorial Day weekend.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, that's interesting to hear his thoughts on the coaches. I do I wonder about Brian Kelly. I think he'll do fine. I just don't know if he'll be able to do what they're paying him to do, which is win natties.
Yeah, I mean that's the big question. I mean that's we all can only give our thoughts right now, and there's not a lot of those hires that were made, even though there was many of them that you go oh, I don't know about that one. So you really got to kind of sit there and think about it. But he's just the one that comes to mind because it's just a weird fit. It just is. And it was from the very beginning and has remained that way, even though he's settled in a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, he's obviously going to have a big microscope. But a lot of these guys are, Billy Napier at Florida and Riley at USC, and the list goes on and on and on. And again, like I said a little while ago, it'll be fascinating to see the retrospective that's done inevitably, kind of like the recruiting class thing that they did. But inevitably the Athletic or some other outlet or all of them will write an article here in a couple years re-ranking the coaching carousel. And I have no idea what that's going to look like. You could tell me any of the number of coaches that were hired could be on the top of that list, Napier or McGuire or whoever. And I couldn't say you're a liar because, we don't know right now. So, yeah, it'll be very interesting here these next couple of years to see how this historical cycle really shook out and what kind of shockwaves it sent through the rest of college football at a very unique time in the sport.
All right, we'll take a break right here.